Hi, I'm Tim Forrest, director and co-writer of our proposed documentary, The Father of the Drums.
Meet the Father of the Drums. He has been with me for 24 years, one of the original Tennessee W.S. Holland.
They come rolling out of Memphis like a hurricane or Texas tornado. It came rolling out.
You know, when you think of rockabilly music, you think of people like Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, and of course, Johnny Cash. Our story is the story of a man whose life parallels the history of rock and roll at Sun Records and the history of Johnny Cash. He was the man who was the only drummer Johnny Cash had for nearly 40 years. W.S. Fluke Holland.
1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready now. Go, can't go, but don't you step on my blues switch. Do anything, get home from our
He was not only here when it happened, he's responsible for a great deal of it. He started out with the Carl Perkins Band, and he played on all of Carl Perkins' Sun Records. W.S. Holland's unique drumming style gave songs like Blue Suede Shoes their real unique sound and set them apart from others.
W.S. and Carl had come down to Sun Studio. W.S. was playing with Carl, and they were going to cut their second, what turned out to be their second hit, was Matchbox. And Sam Phillips had hired Jerry Lee Lewis as a session player that day. And so before they could get the session started good, Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley came in, and as it will happen with most musicians, a jam session broke out, and I think that took up pretty much the remainder of the day. And of course now we know that that session was one of the most famous sessions of all time.
Matchbox. The reason Jerry Lee was here, Sam hired him to play piano. Now, we didn't know that John and Elvis was even in town, but they'd heard we were in town and dropped by. John dropped by, and then Elvis dropped by, and then when they dropped by, it just turned into a jam session. And he got up, Jerry Lee got up, and Elvis sat down at the piano. He was sitting right along here, and they just started singing whatever they thought about doing. Nobody thought anything about it that night. Jack Clement was running recorder, and he didn't think anything about it. He just turned it on and went next door. The Taylor Cafe then was a restaurant, and to get him a sandwich. And I tell you, man, if Jack, if he had just decided, well, you know, after this, I'm going to just turn on the machine and go get me a sandwich, it would have never happened. Sam did think, though, to call a photographer and make that picture. And I kidded Sam later. When it becomes history, it becomes famous. And I kidded Sam later. I said, man, if you'd have really been smart, you'd had that photographer to pan over about 4 foot, I would have been in it, and it would have been famous. But that's how that happened. Just nobody planned anything. Nobody had any idea it was going to happen.
How about it one time, gang?
W.S. Holland spent the better part of 40 years as the only drummer for Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash would always introduce him as the father of the drums.
When we first started, I was playing with Luther and Marshall, the Tennessee Two. And then in 1960, I asked W.S. Holland to join us to make the Tennessee Three. Man, that's when the sound really came together.
I hear the train a-comin'.
And every time we do one, if we have a song like that, which we do, you'll sing a couple a day, I say, give me that flute feel. I want the flute. And nobody in the world can do it. And Buddy, when he starts it, it'll be right there when you get through, too.
I think he'll be remembered as a legend in this business.
Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a radio veteran. I've been in radio and commercial production for nearly 30 years now. I had a video production business on the side for a while, and I've always had a great love of filmmaking, even when I was a child and shooting films with my mother's 8mm movie camera. I guess my rockabilly credentials are that I was friends with Carl Perkins, and I was the first person to ever play anything off of the Class of '55 album. This was an album recorded with Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, and Johnny Cash. Carl had come from the record manufacturer directly and stopped by the radio station. I was on the air, and we interviewed him and played cuts from the record, so I was the very first person to ever play anything off of the Class of '55. I met W.S. Holland through a man I work with at the radio station, another radio vet, Ron Haney, who is also W.S. Holland's guitarist in the W.S. Holland Band. We started talking about making this documentary 2-3 years ago, and we finally decided that the time was right. Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, Elvis Presley, and Johnny Cash. When you think of rockabilly music, you think of names like this. After watching our documentary, we hope that when you think of W.S. Holland, you'll realize that he's the man who provided the backbeat for all of them to build legends upon.
Thank you. I fell into a burning ring of fire, went down, 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 and the flames went higher.